When my colleague Andrea Mitchell applied for her first job at a news radio station in Philadelphia in 1967, she was told the newsroom was no place for a woman. Well, she talked them into hiring her for the overnight shift. I'm here because she and other fearless women never stopped fighting for their places in the newsroom.
Well, folks, I think it's about time to give a big congratulations to Kristen Kristen Welker, for her hosting of Meet the Press. She took it over from Chuck Todd, who drove it directly into the ground. So bad that when they launched a daily Meet the Press, it only lasted for a little bit of time on MSNBC, and now it is off on a web stream. Now, again, congratulations. There's a lot of streamers out there making a ton of money, but Chuck Todd was not supposed to be one of them. I don't know if she'll continue hosting that on the stream, but who knows? It's a bit of an embarrassment for Chuck Todd, MSNBC, NBC, but maybe Kristen Welker will turn it around if she has a good launch with one Donald Trump. Now, a lot of people have been complaining already about this and making a big stink about how the first thing she decided to do was interview Donald Trump. They didn't like this idea. Well, let's watch the entire interview and see if their criticism was valid. On the left, the criticism you were getting was mostly, hey, you shouldn't be interviewing Donald Trump at all because Donald Trump should never be interviewed. Donald Trump is the devil, and we should never hear what he has to say. That's pretty stupid, but we'll listen to what they have to say. I watched it, so you don't have to, and now you get to.
When you talk about retribution, are you talking about directing your attorney general to try to go after your political enemies?
When I talk about retribution, I'm talking about fairness. We have to treat people fairly. These people on January 6th, some of them never even went into the building, and they're being given sentences of, many years.
Are you going to pardon those people who've been convicted,
Mr.
President?
Look at them, and I certainly might if I think it's appropriate.
She asked him about political retribution, implying that what is happening to him right now is not political retribution, and that he's going to be the one who's going to go in there and try to extract that pound of flesh, because the implication is if he gets in office, he'll use the Justice Department against his political enemies. Let me ask you a question. Did that happen? Do we have any evidence that happened? Do we have evidence that that would happen? No, you have no evidence that might happen. He did the exact opposite. He let Hillary Clinton walk. He shouldn't have, but he did. He let her walk. So I'm not so sure I understand this line of questioning, how we got to January 6th, guys, either. Trump's been pretty clear, as have most of them. Anyone that didn't enter the Capitol and wasn't involved in planning shouldn't have been charged. Some of these guys are facing a pretty long amount of time in jail, and they didn't even go inside. So that's a bit ridiculous, but I'm glad he's saying what they're all saying, is that he's not going to let that happen. He'll pardon some of them.
No, it's a very, very sad thing, and they're dividing the country so badly, and it's very dangerous.
Well, Mr. President, we're going to delve into that a little bit later on, but I want to stay on this idea of what you mean by retribution. Are you looking to appoint an attorney general who will prosecute the people you tell them to prosecute?
I'm looking to appoint an attorney general who's going to be tough on crime and fair. Very simple.
Speaker McCarthy announced that he was launching an impeachment inquiry this week into President Biden. Do you see this as a part of the retribution that you see?
No, not at all. I think, you look at the terrible things that have been happening with respect to Biden. Look at everything. Jamie Comer, Jim Jordan, who are fantastic people and very legitimate people. I watched Jamie Comer just a little while ago talking about a lot of different facets of what's going on. And he was the one that said, I guess there are 12 things where it looks like it's stone cold guilty. And the gun charge is only one of the 12. He said this is the only one that doesn't implicate Joe Biden.
So, what's interesting about this is he's talking about Comer and Jordan and what they're doing. She's implying that the impeachment is about retribution for what's happening with his cases. There's a lot of them, and they'll get into it here in a minute. But there's no evidence of that Donald Trump was like, go get them and go make this happen, do this for me. He had an opinion, but she's implying once again that if Republicans do it, it's malfeasance and it's wrong, but if Democrats do it, it's fine. Okay, going after people you disagree with because they had opinions about January 6th, I'm going to talk about all of them, the ones that went inside, go get them. That's fine with the media. But going after Joe Biden or Hunter Biden, That's got to be a political witch hunt.
My question for you, did you talk to Speaker McCarthy about this House impeachment inquiry?
No, I don't talk to him.
Did you tell him that he should open a House
No,
impeachment
I don't
inquiry?
do that. I don't think he'd do that. I mean, he wouldn't do it based on me, no.
Did you
Not at-
talk to your Republican allies on Capitol Hill and say you should support this
No,
impeachment
I don't have to
inquiry?
talk. They're more proactive than I am. They think it's terrible.
Do you think Republican hardliners should abandon their threat to shut down the government over their spending priorities now that there is this impeachment
No, I think
inquiry?
if they don't get a fair deal, we have to save our country. We have $35 trillion in debt. We have to save our
So
country.
you would shut
there's-
down the government? You'd support that?
I'd shut down the government if they can't make an appropriate deal, absolutely.
You know, the correct answer to ask is, how do you justify this when you've driven up trillions of dollars in debt as well? He would say COVID-19 and all this other stuff. That's fine, but he worked to spend more money than anyone else. So, again, this argument about whether he would shut down the government or not, he worked out spending deals a couple of times that added to the debt and deficit a lot. Yes, he did. And Joe Biden claims he's bringing it down, which is, of course, a lie, and I think we all know that. But focusing on that angle of it, of like, oh, the shutdown. And again, it's all just about how Republicans can't govern and all this other nonsense. That's the narrative here, instead of thinking about what's actually happening. And what the discussion actually should be about is, can we sustain this? That doesn't even cross either of their minds.
You are facing 4 indictments, 91 felony charges.
If you would say it properly, I'm facing 4 Biden indictments. He told the Justice Department to indict him, or Merrick Garland said, let's indict him.
Let me ask you this, Mr.
They
President.
indicted their political opponent.
I just want to hear from you on this. I want to know what's in your head. When you go to bed at night, do you worry about going to jail?
What do you think he's going to say here? Yes? I'm scared. I'm terrified I'm going to go to jail? Of course not.
No, I don't, really. I don't even think about it. I'm built a little differently, I guess, because I have had people come up to me and say, how do you do it, sir? How do you do it? I don't even think about it. These are corrupt people that I'm dealing with. They're destroying our country. I don't even think about it. All I think about is making the country great, making America great. Look, these are political, these are Banana Republic indictments. These are third world indictments. The President of the United States sees how we're doing. We have a movement, the likes of which has never happened in this country before. And you see it with the polls. I mean, I'm up on these people by 60 points and 59 points. I don't mean I'm at 59. I'm leading them by 59. You almost say, like, why are they campaigning? Asa Hutchinson, he's at 0. Christie's at 2. Other ones are at 1. DeSanctimonious is at 9.
It's so funny. Like, why? Why do you do these things? Like, get in here and make your point for yourself. Stop worrying about these poll numbers and just go and talk about yourself and why you're not worried about going to jail. Why aren't you worried about going to jail? Not because of your poll numbers or anything, because you didn't do anything illegally. That's what you should be saying. Not because your poll numbers are great. It just makes absolutely no sense. And it's not an answer to her question. It's just braggadocious nonsense. I don't get it. I really don't understand. The answer to that question didn't really make any sense after he said, no, I'm not. And then he went into this whole spiel.
See a poll coming. I mean, I'm leading him by 60 points.
Mr. President.
And you say, why are they doing it? But here's what they did. They saw this happening. And he went to the Attorney General of the United States and he told them, indict Trump.
There's just no evidence of that, Mr.
Why?
President.
Because you mean he's on it?
Let's stay.
You know, it's so funny. Oh, there's just no evidence that you can't say that. You can't do these things. Isn't she the one that just implied that he did the same thing with Kevin McCarthy? Like, he told Kevin McCarthy to do it as retribution? This lady's a hypocrite.
Look at all the lies he's told.
Mr. President, I want to talk
Kristen,
about
wait a
you.
minute. Wait. Could I say one thing? Look at all the lies he's told over the last couple of weeks. He said he was at the World Trade Center, and he wasn't. He said he flew airplanes, right? He didn't. He said he drove trucks, and he didn't. Everything he says is like a lie. It's terrible.
Mr. President,
Even his handicap in golf, he said
stay-
he's a 6. He's not a 6.
I want.
Trump he's so petty. Like, that is such a petty thing. Oh, no, his handicap isn't even 6. You know Trump wanted to get that in there.
to stay focused on you
Okay.
for the purposes of this interview, okay? Because it's important that we hear from you about all of this.
Well, I'd
what-
like you to, but you
tell
keep
me-
interrupting me.
Tell me, Mr. President, tell me what you see when you look at your mugshot.
I see somebody that loves this country in me, that loves this country, I see tremendous unfairness. I think very few people would have been able to handle what I handled.
By the way, do you think your former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, is still loyal to you? He just pleaded not guilty in the Georgia
Well, I hope
case.
he's loyal to me. I mean,
Do you worry about him flipping?
Wrong.
Do you worry
I didn't
about
do
him?
anything wrong.
Okay.
Great answer. Great answer. The implication here is that he pled not guilty, which, by the way, again, doesn't really sound like someone who's getting ready to flip. Usually, if you're going to flip, you plead guilty and then you turn and you try to get a deal, right? And she still implies that there's like some sort of secret cabal behind the scenes in Trump world trying to get him. I don't get it. I don't even get the question, but a great answer on his part, saying I didn't do anything illegal. It's a great answer. Great answer. And when it comes to January 6th stuff, I think he's right. He didn't do anything illegal. He had some bad legal advice and bad opinions. The document stuff's a little different.
I want to ask you about the case related to Mar-a-Lago. A new charge suggests you asked a staffer to delete security camera footage so it wouldn't get into the hands of investigators. Did you do that? It's false.
But let me tell you what
Would you
else.
testify to that under oath?
I'll testify.
You testify to that under oath?
There is no way in hell he's testifying to anything under oath. He is not going to go on the stand. He is not going to do that. There is no chance in hell he is going to testify to these things. It's unbelievable. No way. Nope, not believable. It's also kind of unbelievable that he didn't tell somebody to delete the tapes. And that guy's flipping on him. That's happening. The people down there at Mar-a-Lago are flipping on him. That's his biggest threat right there.
Fake charge by this deranged lunatic prosecutor who lost in the Supreme Court 9-0, and he tried to destroy lots of lives. He's a lunatic. So it's a fake charge. But more importantly, the tapes weren't deleted. In other words, there was nothing done to them. And they were my tapes. I could have fought them. I didn't even have to give them the tapes, I don't think. I think I would have won in court. When they asked for the tapes, I said, sure, they're my tapes. I could have fought them. I didn't even have to give them. Just so you understand, though, we didn't delete anything. Nothing was deleted.
So that's false. The people who testified.
Number one, the statement is false. Much more importantly, when the tapes came, and everybody says this, they weren't deleted. We gave them 100%.
Okay.
And just so you know, I offered them. I said, if you want to look at tapes, you can look at them.
Let's move on to January 6th.
The implication, though, is that Trump did, in fact, tell them to delete the tapes. That's what people are going to testify to. And that's going to be a big problem for him. Obstruction of justice, that kind of stuff.
And the allegations that you tried to subvert the election. And again, I just want to give you a chance to talk about this because voters want to hear about this. The most senior lawyers in your own administration and on your campaign told you that after you'd lost more than 60 legal challenges, that it was over. Why did you ignore them and decide to listen to a new outside group?
Because I didn't respect them.
You'd hired them.
Sure, but that doesn't mean, you hire them. You never met these people. You get a recommendation. They turn out to be rhinos or they turn out to be not so good. In many cases, I didn't respect them. But I did respect others. I respected many others that said the election was rigged.
You called some of your outside lawyers. You said they had crazy theories. Why were you listening to them? Were you listening to them because they were telling you what you wanted to hear?
You know who I listened to myself? I saw what happened. I watched that election, and I thought the election was over at 10 o'clock in the evening.
You were listening to your instincts.
My instincts are a big part of it. That's been the thing that's gotten me to where I am, my instincts. But I also listen to people. There are many lawyers. I could give you many books. There are books that are written on how the election was rigged. There are numerous books that were written on how the election was rigged.
Just to be clear, were you listening to your lawyer's advice or were you listening to your own instincts?
I was listening to different people, and when I added it all up, the election was rigged.
There are issues with the 2020 election. Different rules passed, different things that were done, signature verification, stuff like that. Saying the election was rigged, I think is probably the best ground he has. Saying the election was stolen, it's a bit much. I know we were quibbling over terms here, but I'm telling you, I think that they've done a lot to kind of tighten that up a little bit, but he's still just hung up on this, even though there's nothing he can do about it, and I just don't know what it does for him politically and how it helps him. I don't even know how it helps him in court either, because he's saying he still believes it's stolen, and that's sort of the angle they're going with in Fulton County.
Books
were you
that
calling
are
the
written.
shots, though?
In fact, Molly Hemingway wrote a great book.
But were you
called
calling the
Rigged.
shots ultimately?
Excuse me. Molly Hemingway, who's highly respected and great, she wrote a book, a best-selling book called Rigged.
Were you calling the shots, though, Mr. President, ultimately?
As to whether or not I believed it was rigged, oh, sure.
Okay.
It was my decision. But I listened to some people. Some people said that. Like guys like Bill Barr, he was a stiff, but he wasn't there at the time. But he didn't do his job because he was afraid. You know what he was afraid of? He was afraid of being impeached. He was petrified to be impeached. And how do you not get impeached? Don't do anything.
Now, as you just heard, former President Trump referred to the federal indictments against him as Biden indictments. The indictments have been charged by a special counsel, and according to the White House, President Biden has not spoken to the Attorney General about them, and the White House found out about them from news reports. As for the impeachment inquiry, so far, congressional investigators have not presented any evidence that President Biden has profited off of Hunter Biden's business dealings.
So we're still going with this stuff, I guess, and that's all. Oh, there's no conversation. Yeah, no one at the Justice Department talked to anyone at the White House about this. It's unbelievable. It's beyond belief. And to try to get in here and fact check after the fact and say that kind of stuff, oh, they're not Biden indictments. Give me a break. One of your questions was, will you hire an attorney general who will go in and go after your political opponents? And then you seem to think that Biden isn't doing the exact same thing. Stop it. Just stop embarrassing yourself. And the Hunter Biden stuff, holy cow. Are you still trying to push this idea that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden are not profiting off of Joe Biden's presidency? 10% for the big guy. I mean, Kristen Welker needs to ask that question. Who is the big guy? And why did he get 10%? Why did Hunter say that he gave 50% to Pops? Who's Pops? Oh, gee, could that be Joe Biden profiting? Probably. Very stupid takedown here. She stopped the interview to fact check that. That's really dumb.
I also talked to former President Trump about his actions on January 6th and why he never sent help when the Capitol was under attack. In our conversation, he directly contradicted the sworn testimony of one of his aides, who testified to the January 6th committee that the former president was so determined to go to the Capitol himself after his rally that he grabbed a Secret Service agent inside the president's limo. Take a listen.
I wanted to go down peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol. Secret Service, who I have great respect for, said, sir, it's better if you don't do that. It could be unsafe. Because they didn't because of riots, because, it takes one guy with bad intentions, okay? So I didn't have a dispute with them. You had that one person said, I grabbed the man around the neck. Actually, I wish I was so strong to be able to do that. These are all tough guys, smart guys.
So dispute that account.
Yes, everyone disputes that account because it's stupid. And it calls the whole thing into anything she says into question. Okay? Where's the Secret Service on this? Have they said, oh, yeah, that happened? Come on. That's one person saying an absolute absurd. He was going to take over the limousine, the beast, and drive there himself and then just get out and walk to the Capitol? Give me a break.
Dispute it? Who wouldn't dispute it? She's the craziest account I've ever heard. You mean that I was in the Beast, and she said I was in the Beast, and the Secret Service didn't win. So I took a guy who was like a black belt in karate and grabbed his neck and tried to choke him.
What happened?
How ridiculous. Just so you understand, and I have great respect for Secret Service, by the way. They're fantastic. The Secret Service said, sir, it would be better if you didn't. I said, I'd love to do it. They said it would be better until we went back to the White House. Just so you understand, I spoke. I made a very nice speech.
Tell me how you watched this all unfold. Were you in the dining room watching TV?
I'm not going to tell you. I'll tell people later at an appropriate time. Just so you understand, however.
What did you do when the Capitol was under attack, though?
Let me just tell you.
In the moment that the Capitol was under attack.
Did you see the statements I made in the Oval Office and just outside of the Oval Office?
Absolutely. I was there that day.
Our police are great. We love our police. We love everybody. Go home.
This was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, more than
I don't know.
3 hours after the attack started.
But there were tweets that were put out before that.
I want to know who you called
By the way,
on that day.
Nancy Pelosi. I don't have. Why would I tell you that? Listen, Nancy Pelosi was in charge of security. She turned.
Couple court cases out there right now. There's that's sort of an issue here as well. He probably shouldn't be doing this interview at all with all that happening. But no, he's not going to give you a bunch of information.
Turned down 10,000 soldiers. If she didn't turn down the soldiers, you wouldn't have had January 6th.
Did you call military or law enforcement?
What?
Did you call military or law enforcement at the moment the Capitol was under attack?
I'm not going to tell you anything. Let me put it this way. I behaved so well. I did such a good job. Nancy Pelosi turned down 10,000 soldiers. if she didn't do that.
But
and now
Nancy
I understand.
Pelosi doesn't have the
I
authority
understand
that
the
you
police
have as
testified
commander in
against.
chief, though.
Listen to me.
She's in charge of Capitol Police. Yes, she does have the authority. And yes, she can call people in. And yes, she was offered those people and didn't go for it because she didn't think it was necessary. Come on, I don't know why we're pretending we don't understand that. Nobody knew what was going to happen that day was going to happen. That's why it happened. And everyone wants to blame it on everyone else. Pelosi, everyone wants to blame it on Trump. That's stupid. The unforeseen happened because it was unforeseen.
Kristen, listen to me. I understand that the police testified against her, the chief very strongly against her, Capitol Police, great people. They testified against her, and they burned all the evidence. Okay, they burned all the evidence. They destroyed all the evidence about Nancy Pelosi.
What do you say to people who wonder why you as commander-in-chief, you have authorities that Nancy Pelosi doesn't have as commander-in-chief?
No, she has authority over
why
the
didn't
Capitol.
you send help?
You want him to call, this is the thing that sounds so stupid. You want him to call up the National Guard to come to the Capitol and put that down? Do you want him to go in there and start shooting people? And they're going to get there in hours? She's in charge of the day-to-day support of the Capitol Police and securing the Capitol. That's her job. If it happened today, you guys would be all over Kevin McCarthy.
In that moment, though.
Frankly, just so you understand, I assumed that she took care of it. She turned down.
So when you realized that the National Guard wasn't coming?
Well, you don't realize anything until quite a while. National Guard not coming. I asked it to be there 3 days in advance, and she turned it down.
She says that request was never officially made.
Oh,
just
stop
so
it.
you know.
Let me just tell you.
Let me ask you
The
about
mayor
pardons,
let me
Mr.
tell you.
President.
The mayor of D.C. gave us a letter saying that she turns it down. Okay, we have it. Nancy Pelosi also was asked, and she turned it down. The police commissioner
I'm talking
of
about
Capitol
the day
Police,
of, though.
wait a minute.
Yep.
Capitol Police said that he wanted it, and Nancy Pelosi wouldn't accept it. She's responsible for January 6th.
I love that answer. Love it. Yeah, what happened before matters. They just want to talk about that day. It got out of hand, no question. It was a riot. It wasn't an insurrection. It was a riot. But Nancy Pelosi turned down what she could have got there, and it would have made a difference. And what infuriates and should infuriate everyone in this is that the media still sits here and pretends that this whole thing didn't go down the way it did because they need it to be an issue. That Donald Trump could have stopped the whole thing. He could have just sent in the troops and they would have quelled the whole thing. It doesn't sound like that could have been an idea either. But that's what they claim they want.
Mr. President,
Nancy Pelosi's responsible.
Mr. President, you're the president, though. You have
her.
authorities that no one else has as the commander-in-chief. Do you think you showed leadership on that day?
Yes, absolutely, I did.
Okay. Mr. President, if you were reelected, would you pardon yourself?
I could have pardoned myself. Do you know what? I was given an option to pardon myself. I could have pardoned myself when I left. People said, would you like to pardon yourself? I had a couple of attorneys that said, you can do it if you want. I had some people that said it would look bad if you do it, because I think it would look terrible. I said, here's the story. These people are thugs, horrible people, fascists, Marxists, sick people. They've been after me from the day I came down the escalator with Melania, and I did a great job as president. People were acknowledged. Great economy, great jobs, great this, great that, rebuilt the military, Space Force, everything. I could go on forever. Let me just tell you. I said, the last thing I'd ever do is give myself a pardon. I could have given myself a pardon. Don't ask me about what I would do. I could have, the last day, I could have had a pardon done that would have saved me all of these lawyers and all of these fake charges, these Biden indictments.
By the way, should have done it. You should have done it. I mean, the simple fact is, you should have done it. Now, I know no one knew that they'd go after him like this with all these different cases, but he should have done it. Man, he absolutely should have done it and got January 6th off the table. He also should have pardoned the people who were not in the Capitol as well and who did not plan this whole thing. He should have pardoned them as well.
Biden indictments, political. They indicted. They want to arrest their political opponents. Only third world countries do that, banana republics. So, ready? I never said this to anybody. I was given the option. I could have done a pardon of myself. You know what I said? I have no interest in even thinking about it. I never even wanted to think about it. And I could have done it. And all of these questions you're asking me about the fake charges, you wouldn't be asking me because it's a very powerful thing for a president. I was told by some people that these are sick lunatics that I'm dealing with. Give yourself a pardon. Your life will be a lot easier. I said, I would never give myself a pardon.
Even if you were reelected in this moment?
Well, I think it's very unlikely. What did I do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong.
I mean, is he going to pardon himself? I mean, that's really the question here. They spent that much time on. Is he going to pardon if he's president of the United States? If he wins, what are they going to do? They're going to lock him up? They're going to take him out of the presidency? Come on, give me a break. Give me a break.
Now, a little bit of context here on Mr. Trump's allegations he ordered troops in the days leading up to the January 6th attack. The Defense Department says the former president never gave a formal order to have 10,000 troops ready to be deployed to the Capitol. Of course, it's unreasonable to blame former Speaker Pelosi or lawmakers on Capitol Hill for what happened that day. Pelosi's office says the claim she turned down troops was, quote, completely made up.
You're tying this all to a formal request. Everyone agrees that there was a conversation about this and Nancy Pelosi did not want them. So, yes, there was no formal request of this for it to happen. And by the way, there wasn't an insurrection either, but you keep using that term. So the whole thing is absurd. The media just declares what terms they want to agree with, what terms they don't want to agree with. They call things whatever they want to call them, and then they just say to hell with the whole thing. As long as it breaks towards Democrats, which oddly enough, all these things that they choose, all these terms, break towards Democrats every single time. Just so weird. Damn, Democrats got it good.
When we come back, former President Trump explains how he would handle calls from within the GOP for a federal ban on abortion. In the last election, more than a quarter of voters said the issue of abortion mattered most to them, just behind inflation and the economy.
By the way, why? God, I knew people 70 years old saying that abortion was the number one issue for them. It's incredibly stupid. It is a completely media-driven circus. And they love this story, so now we're going to focus on that now.
And last night, 9 Republican candidates were back in Iowa speaking to the Faith and Freedom Coalition, a reminder of how potent the abortion issue is in that early state. Mr. Trump didn't attend the event, but I asked the former president how he would handle abortion in a second term. I do want to talk about the issue of abortion, which is important to a lot of voters all across the country. Just this week, women in Idaho and Tennessee, I don't know if you saw this, filed suit against their state saying their lives were put at risk after they were denied abortion services because their state's restrictive laws put in place after Roe was overturned. So my question for you, Mr. President, is how is it acceptable in America that women's lives are at risk, doctors are being forced to turn away patients in need, or risk breaking the law?
Ready? A little bit of a long answer. I hope you have time.
I hope you have time. Okay. I'm here for as long as you have.
So you have Roe v. Wade. For 52 years, people, including Democrats, wanted it to go back to states so that states could make the right. Roe v. Wade, I did something that nobody thought was possible, and Roe v. Wade was terminated, was put back to the states. Now, people, pro-lifers, have the right to negotiate for the first time. They had no rights at all. Because the radical people on this are really the people, the Democrats, that say after 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, and even after birth, you're allowed to terminate the baby.
Democrats aren't saying that. I just have to. Democrats are not saying that.
I don't. They absolutely are. What are you talking about? Everything he just said there is 100% true from the very beginning to the last word he said. That answer was perfect. Everything he said there was exactly correct. Ask a Democrat when there should be an end to the right to an abortion, and they will tell you there shouldn't be any risk or any end. That's exactly what they're saying. No restrictions. That is exactly what they're saying. She's lying. I mean, that's a lie. It's an absolute pathetic lie.
Does it bother you, though, that women say their lives are being put at risk? Do you feel you bear any responsibility? Because, as you say, you are responsible for having Roe v. Wade overturned.
This is an issue that's been going on for a long time, and it's a very polarizing issue. Because of what's been done, and because of the fact we brought it back to the states, we're going to have people come together on this issue. They're going to determine the time, because nobody wants to see 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months. Nobody wants to see abortions when you have a baby in the womb. I said, with Hillary Clinton, when we had the debate, I made a statement, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month. You're allowed to do that, and you shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Again, no one is arguing for that. That's.
I'm sorry. There are people who are, in fact, arguing for just that. That's a lie. I'm sorry. This woman is telling an untruth. What she is saying is untrue. There are people arguing for that.
Not a part of anyone's platform, Mr. President.
The Democrats are able to kill the baby after birth.
Let me talk to you.
Nobody wants that.
Democrats don't want that.
So
either.
we're going to come.
Why is the media so hell bent on arguing this point? They can't get an answer from Democrats on when abortions should be unallowed, when a restriction should kick in. Yet they're so damn adamant arguing that guys like Donald Trump, when they're saying, hey, up until birth and after, that's not true, that's not true, that's not true. That is the only time that we get passionate about this. They will not ask people when the restrictions should start. And when they do ask, they won't answer.
I want to know what you want. I want to know what you're going to do if you're reelected.
We are going to come together.
Would you sign federal legislation that would ban abortion at 15 weeks?
No, let me just tell you what I do. I'm going to come together with all groups, and we're going to have something that's acceptable. Right now, to my way of thinking, the Democrats are the radicals, because after 4 and 5 and 6 months, but you have to say this, after birth. You have New York State and other places that pass legislation where you're allowed to kill the baby after birth.
She's going to say it's not true. I'm telling you, you can let it die. That's exactly what they want. Ralph Northam said the exact same thing. That's where all of this all started. And I'm telling you, she is incorrect on this. And she knows it, so she's actually lying.
Mr. President, I want to give voters who are going to be weighing in on this election a very clear sense of where you stand on this.
I think they're all going to like me. I think both sides are going to like me. What's going to have to happen is you're going to have to, listen, you're asking me a question. What's going to happen is you're going to come up with a number of weeks or months. You're going to come up with a number that's going to make people happy, because
no, you're not. This is where Trump's wrong on this. He's right. He kicked it back to states. Now he wants to create a number federally. Look, if they can do that, that's how it's supposed to work. Great, go for it. Let Congress pass a law and have at it. But that ain't happening. Democrats are not going to come on board with that. And the pro-lifers, look, they finally have a say in their own states. You have a hard time getting rid of that one, too.
92% of the Democrats don't want to see abortion after a certain period of time.
If a federal ban landed on your desk, if you were reelected, would you sign it at 15 weeks?
Are you talking about a complete ban?
A ban at 15 weeks.
Well, people are starting to think of 15 weeks. That seems to be a number that people are talking about right now.
Would you sign that?
I would sit down with both sides and I'd negotiate something, and we'll end up with peace on that issue for the first time in 52 years. I'm not going to say I would or I wouldn't. I mean, DeSantis is willing to sign a 5-week and 6-week ban.
Would you support that? You think that goes too far?
I think what he did is a terrible thing and a terrible mistake.
He praised those types of things when they were passed, when he was president, in individual states setting up the challenges. And now here he is. I think the thing that he said here that was most interesting was both sides will like me. He is trying too hard. The Democrats are never going to get on board with you, ever. And you're over here trying to thread the needle here on this issue. And kudos to you for that, but good luck. Again, I'm a pro-choice talk show host that lives in Alabama. Okay? And I think 15 weeks is fine. 13 weeks is fine. Democrats should have been smart and taken some of the bans that were already approved, 13, 18, 22, and left it at that. But they kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, challenging things, and then they set up a challenge, and they lost. I mean, the Dobbs case, that was their mistake. Donald Trump, he's trying to be everything to everybody, and that's never going to work.
But we'll come up with a number, but at the same time, Democrats won't be able to go out in 6 months, 7 months, 8 months and allow an abortion.
Mr. President, when you talk about negotiating, I think a lot of people think to themselves, this is an issue that they care about deeply in their hearts. They know where they stand, and they want to know where you stand. As you know, some anti-abortion groups are really looking for some clarity from you. So let me just ask you to put a fine point on this. Should the federal government impose any abortion restrictions or should it be completely left up to the states?
Before he answers that, I want to point something out. She should ask that question to Nancy Pelosi and Sherrod Brown out of Ohio and anyone else. She should ask those questions to those people and see what they think about this kind of stuff. That's what she should be doing. Donald Trump, he'll sign or not sign depending on what comes on his desk based on what it is. He doesn't get to pass the law. I know he'd like to see an executive order and all these other stuff. I love that. I know they love that stuff. But her focusing on this with him is crazy. She should be asking that question to members of Congress. And Democrats never get asked that question.
No, I don't think you should be allowed to have abortions well into a pregnancy.
But what about the question I just asked you?
No, we're going to agree to a number of weeks or months or however you want to define it. And both sides are going to come together. And both sides, and this is a big statement, both sides will come together. And for the first time in 52 years, you'll have an issue that we can put behind us.
At the federal level?
It could be state or it could be federal. I don't frankly care.
So you're not committed to a ban at the federal level?
I will say this, everybody, including the great legal scholars, love the idea of Roe v. Wade terminated so it be brought back to the states.
It sounds like that's what you think too, that
Well,
it should remain.
Yeah, it should be what he thinks, but it's not actually. He's telling you to your face, we're going to cut off with a number of weeks and we're going to try to get it through Congress. He's telling you that. Are you not listening?
The state
I would
issue.
say this, from a pure standpoint, from a legal standpoint, I think it's probably better, but I can live with it either way. It's much more important. The number of weeks is much more important. But something will happen with the number of weeks, the amount of time, after which you can't do it. And you know what? The most powerful people that are anti-abortion are okay with that now. And
They absolutely are not. This is, I don't know where he gets this. This is no. That's not true. I'm sorry. That's just not true. God, that's wild.
you know what? They weren't okay with that even a year ago.
Your former Vice President Mike Pence believes that a fetus should have constitutional rights. Do you believe that, Mr.
Well,
President?
Mike Pence said something about 15 weeks, too, which was a big change for Mike Pence because Mike Pence had no exceptions. I have exceptions, by the way. I think people should have exceptions. I think if it's rape or incest or the life of the mother, I think you have to have exceptions.
Does a fetus have constitutional rights, Mr.
And a lot.
By the way, the life of the mother stuff is garbage. No one is saying the mother has to die. That is stupid. No one is saying that. That's not happening anywhere. Stop it. Just stop telling that lie. That's a lie. That's the thing they should focus on, being a lie. Life of the mother, every state has that. Every single state. So this whole thing is garbage. Just absolute garbage. This is a garbage question, garbage topic. And just, this is nuts. This is completely nuts.
A lot of people when they don't have exceptions. Now, I will tell you that I think most people, most Republicans are willing. You go life of the mother, rape, incest. I think most of them are there.
But should a
That's a
fetus
big
have
statement.
constitutional rights, Mr. President?
Well, I don't know what he's saying because before he wanted, you couldn't have abortion.
But what
at
are
all.
you saying?
Now all of
What
a
do
sudden,
you think?
excuse me. Now all of a sudden he's saying 15 weeks. I said, wow, where did that come from? That's a radical change. Look, something is going to happen that's going to be good for everybody, and that's what I'm almost like a mediator in this case. They wanted Roe v. Wade terminated because it was inappropriate. We got it done. Something is going to happen. It's going to be a number of weeks. Something's going to happen where both sides are going to be able to come together. And then we'll be able to go into other things like the economy, our military.
Are you saying a federal ban with exceptions? Is that what you're saying?
What I say is very simple, because you can't put words in my mouth like that.
I
Because
just
you've been
wanna
hearing me talk
understand.
about this issue, and
Yeah.
I think talk about it very productively. It could be a state ban. It could be a federal ban.
This is the opposite of a productive conversation, by the way. It's mind-numbingly stupid. I'm sorry, on both parts. Both these people sound like idiots.
But Democrats want that too. Democrats don't want to see abortion in the 7th month. Okay, I speak to a lot of Democrats. They want a number. There is a number, and there's a number that's going to be agreed to. And Republicans should go out and say the following, because I think the Republicans speak very inarticulately about this subject. I watched some of them without the exceptions, et cetera, et cetera. I said, other than certain parts of the country, you're not going to win on this issue, but you will win on this issue when you come up with the right number of weeks.
I think he's right on that, though. That part's true. But again, that has to be done on the state level, not on the federal level.
Because Democrats don't want to be radical on the issue. Most of them, some do. They don't want to be radical on the issue. They don't want to kill a baby in the 7th month or the 9th month or after birth. And they're allowed to do that, and you can't do that.
One important fact check we do want to highlight: abortions later in pregnancy are exceedingly rare.
Yes, but they happen. So he's right. As much as you say they're not happening that often, they're still happening. So continue to hang on that if you need to.
When we come back, we turn to foreign policy, the war in Ukraine, and whether Mr. Trump would consider sending the U.S. military into Taiwan if China were to invade.
This is infuriating. It really is. It's
Welcome back. The Republican Party's biggest fight may be on the issue of Ukraine, where Republican candidates led by former President Trump are turning away from the party's traditional national security roots and questioning the U.S.'s commitment to the war. I asked Mr. Trump about what he believes are the stakes in Ukraine for the United States. Do you think that our security, the United States security, is linked to Ukraine's security?
I think that Europe has to do more. We're in for $200 billion. They're in for $25 billion.
Great point. Yep, that's exactly right. Europe needs to get on board. This is happening in their backyard. They need to do more.
And it affects them more than it affects us. It certainly affects them much more than it affects us.
So you do think that it's linked in some way?
I think Europe has taken advantage of a stupid president.
You've probably...
Look, Biden should say to them, you have to equalize, you have to catch up. You know, Europe is about the same size as our economy if you add them all up, add the countries up. It's about the same size. And Biden should say to them, like I did with NATO. You know, NATO, they all owed money. I said, get your money in. And we had over $430 billion put in almost immediately. And the head of NATO, Stoltenberg, Secretary General, nice guy, he said to me, most amazing thing I've ever done. And he said it publicly, too.
Let me ask you about your strategy, though, because you have said you want to end this war in 24 hours. You saw the meeting between Kim Jong-un.
But before we get into this stupid thing here, Trump on NATO was 100% right. And some of it backed off now because Biden's there and taking advantage of a stupid president. That's right. Trump was right. They're supposed to put in X amount of dollars or X amount of their economy into NATO. And that doesn't mean paying NATO a check. It means building up their military so it can operate in NATO. That's how it's supposed to work. We do what we're supposed to do. We're the only one doing what we're supposed to do. Trump said, if you guys want us to be a part of this, y'all need to start participating, which everyone took and said, oh, how dare you? He's trying to tear apart NATO for Putin and all this other stuff. Some of them said, okay, we'll put in. That's how it needs to work. Or put them out of NATO.
And President Putin. Do you think that complicates your strategy if you were reelected to try to end this war in 24 hours?
It would have been easier if the war didn't start and you'd have hundreds of thousands of people living, most importantly. But it would have been a lot easier if it didn't. But I can get it done, and I can get it done quickly.
Some people hear you say you're going to end the war in 24 hours, and they worry that means President Putin is going to get to keep the territory he's unlawfully
I'd make a fair
claimed.
deal for everybody. Nope.
Doesn't mean that? Wouldn't be a win for Putin?
You know, that's something that could have been negotiated because there were certain parts, Crimea and other parts of the country, that a lot of people expected could happen. You could have made a deal. So they could have made a deal where there's less territory right now than Russia's already taken, to be honest. And you could have made a deal where nobody was killed. They had a deal. They would have had a Ukraine country. Now nobody even knows if Ukraine is going to be totally taken over. I will say this. Something's going on, and it's not good for Ukraine.
I want to ask you about something President Putin said about you this week. I don't know.
Before we get into that stupid nonsense, he's 100% right about Ukraine. At the end of the day, Russia is going to get a piece of Ukraine. We all know that. There's this whole total defeat where Putin is toppled and gone, and Russia says, oh, our bad. Sorry. Niet. Not going to happen. It is just a silly pipe dream. So we'll pump money in as long as Ukraine is willing to send their soldiers into the Russian war machine, because really it's all about gumming that up with their bodies. But there is not going to be a scenario where Ukraine pushes them out of the country and doesn't have to give up anything. That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen at this point.
If you've seen it, this was very recent. President Putin said, quote, We surely hear that Mr. Trump says he will resolve all burning issues within several days, including the Ukrainian crisis. We cannot help but feel happy about it. What do you make of that? Do you welcome his support?
I like that he said that, because that means what I'm saying is right. I would get him into a room, I'd get Zelensky into a room, then I'd bring them together, and I'd have a deal worked out. I would get a deal worked out. It would have been a lot easier before it started. Essentially, for 4 years, I kept them from doing anything. Because you know what? I will tell you this. I've never said this. Ukraine was the apple of his eye. I said, don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. He would have never done it. But again, oil prices. He wouldn't have done it because of me, but oil prices. The prices were so high that he had so much money. So he had all this money to prosecute the war. The one who drove up the prices was Biden.
Given that President Putin has bombed maternity wards.
He's bombing maternity wards. No, he's bombing hospitals. That's true. The use of the maternity wards thing is interesting on that. And everything Trump said there, by the way, is true. And that's why she didn't even remotely push back on it. Because they don't know anything. You got to remember this. These reporters don't know anything. This is all about, when they talk about Ukraine, all it's about is us spending more money there and them sending more soldiers into the Russian war machine. That's all it's about. They don't want any type of peace. They're fine with this dragging out for a while. The head of NATO said the other day, this is going to drag out for a long time. No end in sight. They're fine with that. Russia's bogged down. It's hurting them. Fine. Ukraine, sorry, you're the sacrificial lamb. And yeah, of course Putin would be happy to have this thing resolved with somebody that actually wanted to resolve it. Now, we can pretend that we don't live in the real world, and the only way that this ends is if Putin is driven out of Russia, I guess. But it's never going to happen.
20,000 kids kidnapped from Ukraine by Russia. Mass graves. Yeah. Do you welcome his support, his all but endorsement?
Look,
it's not an endorsement. It's a realization of where everything is. And his endorsement, God, these people, Russia never stops.
I had a very good relationship with him, and yet nobody was tougher on Russia than me. I stopped Nord Stream 2. You never heard of Nord Stream 2. That was the pipeline until I got involved.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. He stopped a lot of stuff they wanted to do, and he kept them at bay. For 4 years, they didn't do anything. As soon as he's gone, they start doing stuff.
I said Nord Stream 2, people that were sophisticated, military people and political people, never heard of Nord Stream 2. I had it ended. The pipeline was dead. Biden came in and he approved it. There was nobody tougher than me with Russia, and yet I got along with Putin. Let me tell you, I got along with him really well. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. He's got 1,700 nuclear missiles, and so do we.
Exactly right. 100% correct. You don't have to like him to respect him. You don't got to you got to think that he's going to be a putz for you to be okay with him. Sometimes you can respect the fact that he's strong. And you can respect the fact that their military is worthy of being an adversary to us if something did come, mostly because of their nukes. But if something came of that, it's a problem. And Donald Trump said, here's how we keep them at bay. And he did.
But look, that's a good thing. Getting along is okay. But I got along through strength. And the war would have never happened. The war would have never happened. Now what's happened, it's so bad. The oil price is so high. It's hard to get it stopped. The oil price is so high. When he goes above $50 and $60 a barrel, he makes a lot of money on the war. Now, it's a humanitarian thing. It's a lot of different reasons. But I will get that war stopped very, very quickly.
I want to talk about another region that you talked about. Let's talk about another region you talked about, China. If you were to cut a deal between President Putin and President Zelensky, do you run the risk of emboldening China to invade Taiwan?
No, not at all. Because China, he's another one I got along to until we had the China virus come in. Once COVID came in, okay, once it was like, I made a great trade deal with China, one of the greatest deals ever made for the farmers and for the manufacturers. $50 billion a year is a great deal. I don't even talk about it because once COVID came in, it was like, I didn't want to talk about anything. I was a much different person. What happened to this world, not our country, the whole world, what happened with COVID. And it just shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. what happened, what China did to the world was so bad. But I had a great relationship
Would
with.
you send
I had a
troops
great
to Taiwan?
relationship with President Xi. Really great relationship, and he was going to stop fentanyl from coming in. He was going to do a lot of. He was going to criminalize it if you made it. You know, in China they have a death penalty for drug dealers. He was going to make that with fentanyl dealers too. But then the election didn't work out, and he never had to do that.
I know you've been asked this, but very quickly, if China were to invade Taiwan, have you made a determination, again, since voters are about to go to the polls, would you send the U.S. military into Taiwan if President Xi were to invade? President Biden says he would.
I won't say, because if I said, I'm giving away, only stupid people are going to give that answer. I heard the other day, DeSanctimonious said something about he was going to do this or he was going to do that. I say, well, why is he saying the strategy? You can't say that. So when you ask me that question, I would never say that, because you give away all your options.
But you don't take it off the table.
I don't take anything off the table.
Great answer. Absolutely great answer. I mean, really, really good answer on China. And as I've pointed out before, Kristen Welker's terrible at this. They've been emboldened by what we've done in Ukraine and how we've let that go. We'll pump money into Taiwan. Fine. They will just run them over. That ain't going to work in that regard. Sorry. It's just not going to work. So it's a stupid idea. And none of them. And Biden won't commit to sending troops in there anyway. Is that what she wants? Committing that if they could do anything, we'll send in troops? Good luck getting that one out of anyone. I think anyone's going to come out and say that. Nor should anybody come out and say that. That's bad idea all the way around. This interview focused on a couple of issues. Some of them were kind of silly in the length they focus on them. We didn't hear a word about the economy, not in the broadcast. Heard very little about Hunter Biden, not in the broadcast. In the longer one, it probably is in there, but it didn't make broadcast. They focus on things they think they can ding Trump on. Russia, China, abortion, and his criminal indictments. That's all they want to talk about. That's what they care about. They do not want to talk about real issues with the economy, because heaven forbid they talk about the number one issue that people care about by their own admission. Heaven forbid they do that. So they want to focus on these trivial issues. This was a crap interview, and it was bad. It was bad. It was a bad run for Kristen Welker, a bad run for Meet the Press. People are going to boycott him because of this and all this other stuff. If they do that, they're stupid. Just don't watch the show. I mean, you don't announce a boycott. Oh, they're interviewing. And by the way, the reason they're boycotting him is because they're interviewing Trump. It's liberals who are mad that they're interviewing Trump. You're not supposed to interview a guy who's going to be the front runner for the presidency. Okay, real smart, real smart. So there we go. New era of Meet the Press, just as stupid as the last era.